Welcome to the Dear Doc Podcast, where we will discuss the business of running a dental practice with a panel of experts. Now, your host, Dr. Christopher Hoffpower.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Dear Doc Podcast. This is Dr. Christopher Hoffpower, your host, and today I am joined by Nathan Hudson of Renew Digital. Now, Nathan, you guys approached me and said, is there any way we can get into your group to talk to dentists about what it is we do for them? And I happened to actually know about you because a friend of mine saved so much money buying panos and sets for his ortho practice. So you guys have been on my radar for a long time. I said, why don't you come onto a podcast and you can really get in front of people. So you guys are sponsors of both the Business of Dentistry and the Dear Doc Podcast. So thank you very much for that and helping us to help what it is that we do for dentists. So Nathan, without further ado, can you tell my listeners a little bit about how you got into the dental field to begin with?
Yeah, sure. So that was back in 2011. I was actually at the University of Akron. They have a really cool sales program. And of all people to show up, Henry Schein had a recruiter there. So we absolutely hit it off and exchanged contact information. And much to my surprise, he's like, hey, I don't have a job for you yet, but I'm going to make one for you. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty incredible. So so I worked for Henry Schein on their digital technology side. I was fortunate enough to be the number one guy in the country. But over all of that, was super thrilled to get into this business, became a student of the trade and still am.
Okay. So after that, you migrated over to Renew Digital. How did that happen? I mean, how did you meet these guys?
Yeah, so Renew Digital came to a lot of the large distributors and said, hey, what we're going to do is we're going to create a value proposition for doctors that's going to extend a benefit both to you and to them and ultimately us. So what happened was they approached these distributors and they said, hey, look, for your doctors who are wanting to upgrade to cbct or newer technology or let us help. So long as they have a strong brand in their office currently, what we will do is we will offer a trade-in program. Now, what you'll do is you'll call us with a year, make, and model and some information that we'll ask you about. But after that, we'll just say, hey, we're good for this price. We can apply that towards your purchase or make a direct deposit in the doctor's account upon testing that the machine is good. So what happened was that enabled doctors to either invest in new technology and actually not disregard or dispose of their technology. Because most doctors I dealt with are like, Nate, thank you so much, and I need that cone beam, but dude, what do I do with my mint condition, low use XYZ? I'm like, yeah, doc, I've already done the research. We can offer you X thousands of dollars towards a trade-in. And after hearing that, a couple of doctors that are pretty prominent say that may have been the easiest transaction I've ever made in a dental office. And I'm like, right. Oh no, I might be losing to them soon. But it was a win for everybody. It was really great.
I really think it is. And in all honesty, in my group, we actually have both new dentists and students who are dental students who are third and fourth year students in my group. And I tell them all the time, if you're going to do a startup, you need to look at Renew Digital because frankly, it doesn't make any sense to buy the new car. You lose so much value when you drive off the lot. Buy the used car. At least until you have more money than sense. So
that's right.
So Nathan, what do you do for Renew Digital yourself?
Yeah, so I'm on the sales side. I assist with a few different things. My apologies. I'll just
it's okay. I've been there before.
So what they call it the sales side, but if I could just be so bold, I like to do education. How about you get an offering of all the major brands that are incredibly reputable across the country, And then I'll do an education for you and you get to decide. Instead of talking to one person that carries one brand, why don't you get to know about all of them? We'll do an education and we base our suggestions and selections off of procedure mix. So it's not about us. It's not about padding our pockets. It's not about that. It's what procedures are you providing? How can we accommodate you and your patients more? And you get to choose.
Well, and I'll tell you, you make a great point there. But even more than just that, even your rep at let's say Henry Schein, and
Sure.
they are going to make a different profit margin depending upon what they sell you. Now, you guys set your own profit margins. They're not determined by the manufacturers. They're determined by you. And so it doesn't give you a dog in the hunt, so to speak, whenever it comes down to what they buy. It truly is what is best for that doctor and what they're doing currently, or perhaps even what they want to include in the future.
Yeah. It sounds so cliche when you start talking about things like, oh, it's all for the doctor. We only service the doctor. But here's the scoop. The co-founders, Lyle and Brian, are tremendous people. And they're like, what if, whether you want a Honda Civic or a Bentley, you got red carpet treatment? And the benefit of this to the doctor, or the value proposition, if you will, is one, save 30 to 50, sometimes 60% off of the cost of new, but still get a machine that's relevant. Most people don't know that 2D and 3D sensors have been the same since 2011 to 2013. So what we do is we treat them like Teslas. When Tesla gets a trade-in, they update the firmware and they update the software. And now the 0 to 60 is 2.2 seconds faster. And everybody's like, well, this is like a brand new car.
Yep.
Same for us. So if we can provide the newest software and a great product with a warranty, it comes with installation, training, 3D software, 3D computer, and a physicist review if it's relevant to your territory, then we just kind of make this process a lot simpler, if you will.
Absolutely. I whenever I upgraded my pano, you were talking about good brands, reputable brands. Whenever I opened my practice, my pano that I purchased said it was upgradable. And so I didn't know that upgradable meant you have to sell your old pano and you'll be given the privilege of buying a brand new cbct. That's what upgradable meant for this company. And they didn't provide installation. I had to get someone to install it on my own. So this whole money saving proposition of going with an off brand wasn't truly a money saving proposition. If I had known about you guys back in 2013 when I started my practice, I most certainly would have purchased from you, particularly since the price, because I follow your prices. The price there was better than what I ended up paying.
Yeah. A couple things with that. At the end of the day, if you can't see it, you can't treat it, right? We've all heard that. But in addition to that, panoramic x-rays are reimbursed at the same price, right? Whether you buy a new one for, some of them are around 40 grand for a 2-dimensional pan. Some of them are around 20 grand. But even if you buy a pre-owned one with a warranty and installation, insurance is reimbursing at the same rates. They
Absolutely.
Don't care about the quality of your pano. So it just, the business aspect of this is what really drew me to it. From my perspective, and patients aren't a price tag. I was the kid who come from a really low income family. So thank you, dental students, for doing all my dental work growing up. But with that being said, there's only 3 ways to take home more money in a dental office that I've ever found. And I'm always open to suggestions, but it's increase your efficiency, it's lower your overhead, and broaden procedural codes that you can bill for.
Absolutely.
And the one thing that made all 3 of those come through, doctor, is cone beam every time. And then I started thinking, I got an opportunity from Renew Digital, and they could save 30 to 60%, but still facilitate the surgeries, the endo, the ortho, the extractions. And I'm like, this is brilliant. You just increased your efficiency by having in-house imaging capability. You just lowered your overhead by 30 to 60%, if you will. And now you can bill out more procedural codes that were maybe on the edge of, maybe I can do that implant, or maybe it's too close to the nerve. But now you know what's good.
Absolutely.
So cool.
And CBCT, while we're on that, because you guys actually sell a full range of products, but CBCT will change the way that you think as a doctor. So talk to me a little bit about the range of products that you have, and then I'm going to ask some very specific questions. So you guys, I know you have panos, you've got CBCTs. Do you offer anything else? Do you offer any radiation sources, handheld units? Do you offer any intraoral sensors? What all have you guys stretched out into?
Right now we are focused in extraoral imaging. The one thing that I thought about when I came from Shine, they're a Fortune 200 company, right? And when I had an opportunity to come work for Renew Digital, if I could just be so transparent, my ego was a little bit in the way, because it's just like, so wait a minute, I'm going to be a Fortune 200 company #1 guy, and then I'm going to go sell pre-owned x-rays. And once I saw how they orchestrated business, I'm like, you guys are executing like endodontists over here. And they're like, well, keep in mind, Nate, we're just doing extraoral imaging, right? So we don't have to do chairs, units, lights, CAD/CAM, sensors, cameras, sterilizers, sterilization systems, cold sterile. And I'm like, man, that's a really great point. So they're like, so we're actually really honing our craft, right? So right now we're not into those other areas. However, in terms of, panoramic, pan plus Ceph, pan Ceph, CBCT, we do those things. So you could have market leader, or, a lot of orthodontists come to us for ICATs specifically, or some people just want like, man, I don't care about the dose, or the dose is the most important thing to me. So
you're gonna go what, Vatek Green, or you're gonna go
ICAT
Flex 17?
Yeah. I've got a video of a radiologist with the ICAT Flex V17 taking a full field of view, and the radiometer sitting right in front of the ICAT, and the radiation exposure, yes, is 1.38 microsieverts.
Yeah. So basically wearing a watch with a glowing dial.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, it's almost like, okay, cool. Well, I can either let my kids have my iPad for 6.5 minutes, or we can take a full field view ICAT.
Exactly. I love that. I love that example. So you actually dipped into the area I was going to go for, which is great, because that makes a great segue into it. And that is when you're looking at different dentists and different practicing styles and different things that people do, there are going to be hallmark units that you say, okay, look, this is the one for you. Now, it gets more complex when people are like super GPs. They do a bunch of different things. But I'm going to ask you specific questions, and I'm going to say, what is your best thing that you offer this person? Okay, so you got a brand new practice startup, GP, doesn't know anything except for what they taught him in school, Crown and Bridge. What you to get?
Okay. Yeah, so if you're not doing specialty procedures, we're not a big fan of pushing you into a product that's going to, we'll call it, over leverage you, right? Like the analogy that you said earlier about buying a brand new car. Look, right after college, I wanted a Mercedes, but it just wasn't in the cards for Nate Hudson, right? So I got something pre-owned. Yes, it was a Toyota Tacoma, nothing crazy, but still reliable, right? And that's our mantra here as well. So what I'd often ask is, do you want something that does bite wings, right? Extraoral bite wings. Okay. In some cases people do. And a lot of doctors ask me like, hey, Nate, what about something that's 3D upgradable? Huge topic. It's an incredible selling proposition. But it's not a great proposition for a doctor.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah, 45 to 70 grand to upgrade a 2D to a 3D. Why don't we buy a new one?
I agree. Or a used one.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's a great point about the intraoral versus extraoral bite wings, and whether or not your pano can do it. I agree on a brand new GP getting out of school, guys. If you are not going to be in the next year placing implants, just get a pano. And if you're going to be seeing kids, if you're a pediatric dentist, you don't probably need a CBCT ever. So get a pano that can do external bite wings and learn how to code them. That way you don't get into trouble. Do you guys give them feedback on that and the proper coding to use for those external bite wings?
Such a great question. Look, there's three types of bite wings I've ever found in the dental office. There's an intraoral bite wing that is conducted with either a film, phosphor plate, or a sensor. And then there's two different types of extraoral bite wings. One is called a segmenting bite wing. The other one is more of a diagnostic bite wing. So here's the difference. A segmenting bite wing, we take a pano, we take a segment of that pano out, oftentimes inclusive of third molar to bicuspid, and you'll get beyond apex to apex, which is cool. Okay, so you can really see some abscesses over a regular PA or a bite wing rather. And then the other one is a diagnostic bite wing, which is the fame and glory of Planmeca Pro Max. And it does a really great extraoral bite wing. But what it does is as it rotates around the mandible, it follows the contour to open up interproximal contacts to diagnose extraorally. This is not a replacement for your intraoral imaging, for the record, okay? In addition to that, I've heard a few people say, yeah, doc, just bill your extraoral bite wings as intraoral bite wings. Those of you who know Charles Blair, I had a face-to-face conversation with him, and I said, Dr. Blair, can you do this? And he said, yes.
Really? What?
He said, yes, it's just called insurance fraud, just like he just mentioned. I was like, Dr. Blair, thank you for having a sense of humor. But he was like, no, if people are billing that under a different code, that's insurance fraud. And if you ever had a case against Delta Dental or MetLife, you're not winning that case, okay? So if you don't know how long you've been submitting these claims, they'll just go back for as long as they possibly could to get the reimbursement back from you for the bite wings that you submitted. Don't do that, please.
Yes, I totally agree. Okay, so we've covered that. New GP getting out versus new pedo getting out. That's really what all that they need is they need a pano. Sometimes maybe they want a pano that does external bite wings if they have kids that are non-cooperative. And yes, they're not a replacement for intraoral bite wings. So our next thing that we're going to talk about is, let's say that you are an orthodontist. What is the unit that you recommend for orthodontists?
Yeah, so orthodontists are awesome because they do a wide array of things. Some doctors are really screening for sleep and trying to help, we'll call it total health of the body. Right. And then some are like, look, man, I don't want to be exposed or liable or I just want to see that impacted canine. Like, how is that affecting growth or the other dentition around that canine? And so I just want something with an isolated field of view. And a lot of docs are like, hey, man, I'm just cool with a 2D PANSF, right? We are helping patients occlude properly and giving them a better smile and feeling more confident. So I think there's a place for everyone, but probably the most commonly requested product for orthodontists, or from orthodontists, I should say, are the ICAT large fields of view for a couple of reasons. One is, you can create a video off the scan and it's built right into the software, which is really neat. So it'll show the whole scan and every patient is just like, hey, wait. Can we start the video again? Because I want to take a video. I want to take it on my
iPhone every single
time.
Exactly.
Yes. And so now everybody is like walking out of there as a marketing venue for you, although you're just trying to educate them on, why Tammy's airway is super constricted.
Absolutely.
Right? Really cool. And it'll do 4 images with every scan, right? You can get a pan, a ceph, a volumetric airway analysis, and a full 3D rendering.
To see. No, you forgot TMJ function as well.
Oh, okay. Got it. Yeah.
I have an iCat Flex 17 in my office, and one of the most fun things I do is whenever a kid comes in, I'll put the mouse on the screen, and I'll say, so what do you think about this x-ray? Is this the coolest thing you've ever seen? And I'll make the head nod up and down. And I'll look at the screen and I'll say, I wasn't asking you, I was asking Timmy. And they crack up. They love it. And the parents love it. And they whip out their iPhones. I say, can you do that again, Doc? We want to videotape that. So yeah, lots of fun with that. But it's great diagnostic images, I think. So let's say you've got a person who is an endodontist. All they do is endo all day long. What are you going to recommend to them? I have my ideas from my research. I want to see if they line up.
Sure. So a couple of things, and some people have brand preferences, but after being participating in the Mish International Implant Institute and hearing Dr. Randy Resnick present, and his mantra is, hey guys, if you are doing a lot of molar endo, and he teaches a great cbct course, If you're doing molar endo, you really want to see MB2s and ultra high definition. So what you want is a machine that will produce a voxel size of 100 microns or below to get that ultra high definition. And one of the products that's been known for that, through and through is CareStream. They got a huge endo following. They implement with a ton of endo specific practice management softwares, and they'll do the most refined voxel size of 75 microns, which is really, really great definition.
And it blows my iCat 17, my Flex 17 away whenever it comes to imaging a molar. Another one that I've seen that is just insanely precise is the J Merida.
Yes,
it is. God, it's sharp. Now I wouldn't want to use it for what I do. So
yeah.
Let's say you've got a doc who does single tooth implants, lots of single tooth. What would you recommend for them?
Yeah, so small field of view. There's a lot of products out there on the market, and almost every cone beam manufacturer makes a image that is collimatable or more focused. So you take it from a larger image to a smaller image, so you can focus right in on that. Maybe it is single tooth implant or an endo procedure, what have you. So, and we have a few different options that are really great for that.
Okay. So last, let's say that they are, because I'm assuming that these are going to be the same models that you recommend for this. So if I'm wrong, split them up.
Sure.
Let's say they're an airway doc, or they do a lot of full mouth implant placement. I'm assuming that you're going to recommend one of the large FOVs, probably a Vatek Green or a iCat Flex 17, but surprise me.
Yeah, exceptional products. And again, everybody's budget's different. Okay. So we have a lot of different feedback for implants and airway. I have some people who love the Galileos.
Really?
Right. And so because you can get into that machine for like $39,900 when that machine was $170,000 to $190,000 new. Right. So that is pretty appealing to some, and some are very loyal Sirona followers, so they like that product. So it's great for implants. It's great for airway. It would not be my choice for endo specific situations, but extractions, ridge augmentation, sinus lifts, good. And it's a 15 centimeter spherical field of view. Mm-hmm. So a lot of sleep docs, Sal Rodas is one of them, talk about how you need to have 13 by 15 field of view minimum to be able to see nasion to epiglottis, back out mental foramen, if you will. So to give you the full picture of airway, not everybody cares about the full picture of airway. They want to see up to the nasion. They want to be responsible for it. So they want to see like, hey, how are we looking? I want to see both arches and just the airway through the throat, so to speak. Right. Okay, cool. So in that case, yeah, you got other options. iCats are awesome. You can do the medium field of view. Shoot, right now we've got those right now for $29,995. When I was at Shine, they were $130,000. So
you just made me so sad.
This isn't a dig on Shine. This pricing is pushed by imaging sciences. You have to adhere to that, and it's very much worth $130,000. Everybody that buys it's just like, why didn't I have this 9 years ago? And so still a great product.
Next question. Two more. One is, what is the largest FOV that currently exists? Actually, three more questions. The next is stitching. Does it matter or not? You know, that's a big one. You get a lot. And the last question is, if what you're worried about is soft tissue. Now, I haven't seen this happen yet, but I'm thinking some oral pathology type people are going to start wanting to get cbcts simply because of the amount of information that they can get off of it, plus the soft tissue masking and overlay that you can also pull off on some of these units. So if I'm crazy, you can tell me that too. But let's answer those. First is, which one do you want to cover, stitching, or do you want to cover largest FOV?
Let's cover largest FOV first. Now there are a couple of products that are in existence. We don't like to focus in that will do a larger field of view of the flex. So I'm not going to cover those. It will do beyond the skull, if you will. You can see even things around the skull, the whole skull. I think it's like a 23 by 30 field of view. It's insane. Yes. And then you have the iCat Flex V17, which is a 17 by 23, or you can do the predecessor of that, which is called the next gen, or often referred to as the platinum iCat, still 17 by 23. Okay. And then on the stitching front of it, I don't like to recommend stitching products. Here's what stitching is. So let's say that you need a full airway scan, but the product can only do a 9 by 16 field of view. Well, what will happen is the machine will rotate around the mandible, if you will, and then it will maneuver up, and then it will rotate around again. And what it will do, it will take both of those volumes, stack them, and stitch them. Now, the problem with that is that sometimes it takes a little bit more time for that, and a lot of folks do not want to wait 3, sometimes 8 minutes for that to stitch the image together. Or if it doesn't get the algorithm correct and it misstitches and you see an overlay,
it's a nightmare.
It's a nightmare.
So let's say you've got a patient who's heavily restored, particularly with PFMs, and you have a lot of scanulation. That is going to throw off the algorithm completely because it can't find the fiduciary markers that it needs to do the stitch. Yes.
And so what happens in those situations is people are frustrated with the purchase. Now, we talk about this up front at Renew Digital because we don't want you to be frustrated. We want what's best for you. But if you don't buy nice, you typically buy twice, right?
Yep.
And when you trade in a product later on, you don't always get all your money back. So all that said, we want to put you in the right spot the first time.
So before we get into our last question, which models stitch, which models don't? And I've also heard of stitching cross arch. Is that still a thing?
Yes. Yeah. So like on some older products, we don't tout this or push it, but like a Carestream or Kodak 9000, it's what we call the Endo Dream Machine. It's 76 microns. You can buy them for as low as 25 grand, and they're extraordinary image quality. But some people will use a triple stitch. So what it'll do is 3 individual scans, and then it will stitch all 3 of those scans together. It gives you a little noise in the image. Your image quality isn't quite as pretty, but it will facilitate that so you can do maybe an all-in-4 or what have you. The other products that stitch, I always tell people, like, if you know you're going to be doing sleep and you want to see the Nasion, for the love, please, it's going to probably cost you an extra 10 grand up front through Renew Digital, maybe 20 to 35 if you purchase new, but you will be frustrated. And if you try to trade in a machine that's 2 years old, it doesn't feel nice, if I can say that. Yeah. So it's all about what you want to do.
Which one's stitch then? Which brands?
There's a mega majority that will stitch. So Cavo, Instrumentarium, Plan Mecca, Prexion, and there's
iCat, to my understanding, does not, right?
Does not. No. Some people will intermingle the word stitch because it takes 360 slices, if you will, and it makes a volume. That's a slice, not a stitch. A stitch is when you grab something and then you put something on top of it or on the back or.
Well, one is related positionally, the other one is related to your fiduciary markers, which is a huge difference, particularly in, like I said, a heavily restored case. But all right, so I had one last question. Do you remember what it was?
Stitching, field of view, and you asked the brands that
soft tissue, oral pathologies. So am I smoking crack there, or is that something that they should have on their radar? I know that I've looked at it, and I actually I sent someone in the other day, and their ENT, it was like, your dentist sent you, and then I sent the Diacom with the viewer, and he's like, I don't know what the hell this is. We need to go in. Turns out he'd never seen it before. It was some sort of weird exotic infection, and so I got a little note from him, blah blah blah. But the patient was super happy because saving her life and shit like that. So So anyway, all that aside, Talk to me about the soft tissue imaging aspects of this, because they, I think, are pretty huge.
Yeah. And oftentimes, a lot of these products that we offer are going to show soft tissue. Some of them show it a little bit better than others. But on cbct, oftentimes something needs to be, we'll call it harder tissue, maybe calcified or carotid, if you will, for it to really show up incredibly well. Here's the benefit. 3D machines are seen in 2D views, okay? So you can see it in a 3D, but you can also, when you slice that, you want to see sagittal, coronal, or axial view. Those are 2D views. And it's oftentimes super scary for somebody who hasn't done CBCT, but when you slice it and you see an anomaly, at that point, you pull out your consent form and you say, hey, I'm referring you to, maybe it's beam readers, maybe it's my local radiologist that you haven't a relationship with, maybe it's your ENT like you had just mentioned, or someone of the sorts that you just mentioned, but have them sign that consent form that you have said, you need to get this checked out. This could be something small, it could be something incredibly big. So I think the soft tissue is still maybe being a little bit more developed and created through algorithms in the software, because the software is really what's brought the technology so far in the last 8-9 years.
Absolutely. And until they put their attention on it, that's not something that's going to be hugely important. Now, I do have something to share with you that happened in my office yesterday.
Okay.
Let's see if I can make this viewable.
Okay.
There we go. Okay. So this tooth came in and it had cracked tooth syndrome. Couldn't figure anything out from this other than they had a slight furcal involvement and some widening on the distal of PDL. And so I just posted this case telling doctors that they need to definitely look at getting a CBCT, because that's when, and you were saying two-dimensional images, this is when it comes in. And now you can clearly see there's a draining tract there. There's a huge infection. And whenever we pulled the tooth out, it had the biggest abscess on it that I have ever seen on a tooth. And it was all because it had a furcal fracture that we could not duplicate reliably whenever we were doing bite tests. Wasn't responsive to cold, but the patient just said, hey, look, every now and then I get this sharp pain back here. And so I took a look at their CBCT. I said, look, we took one last year, but it's really the only thing that's going to give me any more information than I have right now. So I took some probing depths, and I found a deep probing depth on the buccal, and we took the CBCT, and sure enough, that tooth was fractured. And if you dial in close enough, you can use what I like to call imaginostics. Whenever you see an image and you know what you're looking for already, so you can see it, but whenever you don't know it's there, you're not going to see it. Yeah. So I used some imaginostics, and I could visualize the fracture, and so we extracted the tooth, and sure enough, the fracture was exactly where I thought it was, and huge abscess, huge. But that's the kind of thing that having a CBCT can do for your practice. And also, that thing I talked about with the ENT is not the first time that's happened. I actually had a young lady who had been very sickly for quite some time. She'd complain every time that her doctors didn't know what was going on with her. They labeled her with lupus, of course, because that's what you do whenever you don't know what the hell's going on. And so her liver function tests were all over the map. Her blood work was all over the map. And so just in a routine examination, I noticed a pedunculated mass on the lateral border of her left maxillary sinus. And I sent it in because my thought was, hey, this could be fungal in nature, because sometimes you'll get a growth from the lateral wall. And turns out it was actually a cancer that had metastasized. Once they biopsied it, they realized that cancer generally occurs in the liver. They went looking, they found the cancer that was throwing her blood work off, and it had just metastasized from the liver. And that's what her doctors couldn't figure out. I actually got the nicest letter from her. She said, because of you and that amazing technology that you have, not only did you save my life, but my oncologist tells me I'll live to see my 3-year-old son graduate. I mean, it's those stories that make just kind of an undeniable argument. Get a cbct in your office, people. Learn to read it.
Yeah, that's really incredible. I mean, if you had not had that cbct, one, you wouldn't take advantage of the procedure that day. And look, a lot of people are like, Nate, you're just all about the money. No, I'm not. What I'm about is taking care of the patient when they have discomfort. The problem is oftentimes is patients come in and you hear something like this. Good news is we didn't see anything. Bad news is we didn't see anything.
Yep.
And the question in the patient's mind is, why in the heck did I come here? Like, what can you do? But oftentimes you'll see, even from intraoral to extraoral imaging, because it's a different type of radiography, you won't see an abscess with an intraoral sensor. You could have the best sensor in the world. And sometimes you don't see the abscess.
And you didn't see anything on that x-ray, did you?
No. And then a panoramic
that huge.
And you're like, this is just a panoramic. How can I see an abscess on this? But that radiation is going all the way through the cranium, if you will. And the intraoral is just parallel to the dentition. So oftentimes when I would help with other people looking at this, I'm like, okay, I hate to tell you to do this. Maybe do a complimentary pan or a complimentary bite wing off of your pan. And then you get to help that patient get out of discomfort day of versus they come back in 2 months, like, please look at this. Maybe it's gotten bigger, so on and so forth. So yeah, you're absolutely right. CBCT is just game changer. Everybody that we hear from that calls us back like, dude, you don't understand how great this is. I thought these people were crazy. It's incredible.
Absolutely. How many of them lose faith in root canals almost instantly?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So people are just like, pull it. I had that happen the other day with a personal friend. He's like, I'm not doing that again. First one didn't do right. They did it 3 times, still wasn't right. So pull it. I'm like, oh no. So yeah.
Well, it's amazing, all these root canals that you see come into your office that look so good on bite wings and PAs, and you take a CBCT and there's this huge glaring abscess. A lot of times I'll see where it's actually perforated the cortex and where it's draining. I had one patient came in and they just had, like a consistent pain here. I said, well, let's take a CBCT. Let's see what's going on. It turns out it was actually an abscessed tooth that it was previously treated with endo, but the residual abscess had actually eaten through the lingual border of their mandible. And so it was draining into this patient was in danger of Ludwig's angina because of where this drainage was occurring. I mean, they could have died. That's powerful. It's powerful having those kind of tools in your practice.
That is huge.
So talk to me a little bit about anything that I have failed to ask. A lot of times whenever we go through these interviews, I have certain questions in mind, things I think are important. But
Sure.
Talk to me about what I should have asked or any other pointers that you have for our listeners.
Yeah, I mean, here's the scoop. At the end of the day, if you get a good pano, new, right? They include it on your new office order. I've been very fortunate. I've done over 400 startups. It's been great. I love seeing the success. I feel like Chip and Joanna Gaines, just getting to see somebody's dreams come true. It's so neat. But at the end of the day, like, you can buy a 2-dimensional pano, maybe 25, 30 grand. And that's a pretty good one. Okay. Mm-hmm. Or you could buy a cone beam from us for literally 25 to 30 grand. And people are like, wait, what? Yeah, so if you're dabbling in implants or you're doing molar endo, you don't like retreats, aka seeing the same patient twice and only get paid once, using up your chair time, which in some cases is worth around, anywhere from $500 to $1,000 an hour. Do your research on ADA; they talk about it a lot. But you can buy a cone beam up front for the price of a 2-dimensional machine, which is kind of cool. But outside of that, I think you've covered a lot of great things. A lot of people are just really hesitant about, I'm not buying something pre-owned that's this high tech. I beg you, I plead with you, please look at the reviews on our website. There should be over 300 on our website. I think there's over 200 5-star reviews on Google. See what your colleagues are saying. Like, talk to somebody that has used us in the past. You can spend all night reading reviews if you wish, but it's real deal. I'm not moving from an incredibly prestigious position to this incredible position where I get to help doctors save time, money, and increase their offerings for nothing. These guys are legit. So good.
All right, Nate. Well, thank you for joining us on the podcast today and kind of giving us a hint about what you guys do and giving some free information as well to our listeners.
Sure.
Well, guys, this is Doc Huffpower. You've wasted another 40 minutes listening to the sound of my voice. So thank you all for being supporters of the Dear Doc podcast. And thank you for joining us today. This is Doc signing off.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Dear Doc podcast, your source for the business and legal questions associated with your dental practice. Don't forget to subscribe to the Dear Doc podcast on all major platforms.